Welcome to Association Chat, my friends. We are here yet again. And what are we talking about in this world that we're living in and in this podcast episode is the metaverse. The metaverse. I have to say that before I introduce our guests, I have to wish everyone happy holidays because we are going into holiday week. I think this is maybe the second day of Hanukkah. We've got Christmas coming up. We've got all kinds of celebrations going on all over the world. And the one thing I know for sure is that many of you have your out of office already on. So if you are here and watching this, thank you. My name is KiKi L'Italien, and I am the host for Association Chat. And Association Chat is this online discussion where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I have to say that the metaverse has people asking all kinds of questions like, is this like Second Life? Is this just a place where we float around with our avatars and play games? Is this supposed to be a replacement for in-person meetings and events? What is this? What is the metaverse? And that is the point of our conversation today, talking about what is the metaverse and what is the potential for the metaverse for associations and nonprofits. And with me is Andrew Wilson, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer, leading all marketing initiatives for the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau. We also have Mike Aaron, and he's the entrepreneur who created the very first online safety web-based system for Delta Airlines. He founded Visit Real Cities, visitrealcities.com, the world's first photorealistic metaverse platform for cities in the tourism market. And I am bringing them on. Thank you for joining me today. Yay, Mike. Yay, Andrew.
KiKi, how are you?
I'm doing really well.
Right.
Andrew, I saw you last when we were in Nashville for ASAE Annual and got a chance to, for the first time, take a little glimpse of what you've been doing with Atlanta, seeing Discover Atlanta's beautiful Atlanta metaverse, which made me curious to go jump in and play around with it later, where I encountered Mike and Mike Aaron. Thank you so much for being here. That's when I got to find out even more. And it led me down this path to have you on here for the first of what I hope to be a series of conversations and maybe even some tours through to better understand the possibilities and capabilities of the metaverse. So, deep breath as we jump in. The thing is even before we got started today, we had a wonderful comment that came in from a man I know very well, Glenn Tecker, who said, at the moment, there's not even agreement on what the metaverse is or will be, except for fluffy promises from competitors, Marcom divisions trying to claim the space as their own. A discussion of practical uses of the existing components of what may become part of the metaverse, like VR and AR, would be refreshing and useful. And what do we say to that? That's what we're talking about today. So can I pose this question to you, Mike, first and ask you, what is the metaverse and how is it different from what people think about when they think about, VR and some of these conversations about like Web3?
It's a very complicated set of answers for that, right? Because you've got a combination of technologies, then you have the hardware and software that make up these components called the metaverse. And then you've got this thing floating out there called Web3. How does that fit into this whole discussion? And you've got AR and VR, and these buzzwords tend to have a confusing effect. But for purposes of the discussion that we're having today, we're talking about the metaverse, right? And so the metaverse is defined by Andrew Ball, and we have it posted here on the Atlanta website. I'm sorry,
Matthew Ball.
I've got Andrew on the mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Think of the metaverse as kind of a virtual reality that you can visit on your phone, on your computer. You can perhaps, instead of, imagine if you would, walking through Google Earth and you're navigating around Google Earth. But instead of using your browser to navigate around the streets and look at kind of 3D pictures, you can actually interact with these. With the elements that you see, you can enter a building, you can meet people and talk with them. You can purchase things. There's persistence, where things that you encounter and change are the same the next time you log in. There's identity, there's security, there's all of these things around it that creates kind of this virtual world, right? And so Matthew Ball, thank you, Andrew, for that, defines the metaverse as being a combination of meta worlds. So you have these different virtual worlds that can then be connected into one virtual metaverse, where conceptually you have the ability to jump between these virtual worlds and experience them all in kind of one fluid, interactive experience. And so Atlanta's meta world, we're doing something very special down there. We're creating a meta world. We've created, let me say past tense, a meta world that allows for a number of things that are consistent with the definition of a metaverse, but also matches the business needs, which is kind of unique and special in this space. And I'll let Andrew speak to that a little bit more. He's more eloquent about the business case for Atlanta as opposed to conceptual technology and those kinds of things.
Well, and this is why I'm so glad to talk with you, Andrew, because, and thank you, Mike, for that great sort of explanation and definition of what we're talking about when we're thinking about the metaverse. Andrew, I know that everyone, for a lot of people, not everyone, when they started thinking about the metaverse, may have been when Facebook went through their big rebrand and rebranded as Meta and all of this, which I feel, and maybe a lot of people feel like that was kind of a step backwards in people really understanding what this is all about, and maybe gave it sort of a false hype or overhype of what to expect. But you are using it in some interesting ways and applying the metaverse for the city of Atlanta. How are you thinking about it? And then, what made you think that this was a good idea to do this now? So we'll start with, how are you using it?
How we're using it, we're just entering into this, so it's early days, but the vision that we have is to use it for conducting virtual site visits. Mm-hmm. That's the basic business use case that justified the investment and the risk, frankly, of getting into the metaverse in this context. The idea being that we could conduct hosted, accompanied visits of our meeting venues around Atlanta. And right now, we basically built a proof of concept. So right now, all we can do is walk around a park, a 22-acre park. But we are deep into the building out of our entire convention center, which is, 1.5 million square foot. We're building a digital twin of that. And we hope through the course of 23 to bring on board venue partners so that we will have a multitude of our meetings venues present in the Atlanta Meta World, so that you can get a good idea to make a preliminary assessment of whether or not Atlanta is a good fit for you. And then if it is, based on the virtual experience, what we're really expecting then is that, we move prospective, meeting planners, prospective clients through the funnel, and they would actually come in person and, see if the virtual actually is delivering on the promise. So that's the business case. How we got here, though, is that we were looking at, one of the things we pride ourselves in Atlanta is always trying to be ahead of the curve, mm-hmm. In terms of the use of technology to do our job, pursue our mission, which is promoting the city. Atlanta for conventions and tourism. So we started to research what the metaverse was about. And I very quickly came to the conclusion that it was a highly risky sort of varying to being an anarchic environment, in some cases, like some of the platforms that were a free for all with people running around with guns, looking for entertainment and gaming, to being environments that were very sort of cartoonish, childlike in the representation of the built environment. Basically, my conclusion was that this was nothing that existed was really something that a marketer of a destination should be at all involved with. So even though big brands like Nike and Gucci and etc. are getting involved in some of these metaverse platforms like Decentraland and Roblox, etc., I didn't feel comfortable using those platforms to try and represent our destination. I wanted more control over the environment. So much like in the non-metaverse space, we cede control on a daily basis to platforms like Facebook, or Google's platform. And they're the ones who make up the rules, and we just have to follow along. And it's great if there's alignment of purpose. But what I could see was that there was an opportunity for us to create some of the rules, to build a platform that fit our needs and the needs of our users, whether they're on the business side or on the leisure side. We're not in the business as a destination marketing organization of putting on concerts or creating games, or sporting events, but we are the ones about promoting those. Other people can do that. So we wanted to create an environment that fit our needs. And so we felt that it was probably worth the risk to get in early and try and build this the way we wanted it to be, and hope it gets some traction. And if it doesn't, at the end of the day, get traction on a broader scale, we'll nonetheless have built a tool that we will be using on a daily basis to further our business goals. So it kind of was a lower risk proposition to go at it the way we went at it.
I mean, I have to say that when I was so fascinated in seeing that Atlanta had taken this approach, because immediately I started thinking about, some of the things that I've done in the past, whether it be working on marketing campaigns with marketing teams, or before that, when I worked with the American Red Cross, it was like planning out an annual meeting, working with the events team. And it was like, well, you can't take everybody on a site visit. You can't take everyone, even then. And now, it's like with the cost and expense, even more so. And then never had I been a part of a team where you could also bring along your entire marketing team, the people who work with your volunteers and chapters, and all of this different stuff. So when I was looking at it, I thought, well, this would be brilliant for anyone who's really wanting to take their planning and preparation for their in-person meetings and events to the next level in a way that we've never been able to do it before. And, I didn't even think about it as like a replacement. I thought about it as, which I think a lot of people do. They start thinking about what kind of events can we host here in the metaverse. And I was way more interested in how to apply it to things like, how can we plan and prepare in ways we never could before? Like, what if we could take our entire marketing team and canvas those areas in Atlanta where we know that the conference is going to be? Wouldn't we be so much more effective? And so that was exciting for me when I started thinking about it that way. Mike, are all metaverses built the same? I mean, I know that, we're in the beginning days of like how we're looking at cities. And so how is like, for example, how is Atlanta's metaverse that you've crafted different from other metaverses and how they're crafted out there?
I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to respond and piggyback on what Andrew said with kind of a 4-point piggyback response, and it ties in with what you said, which is what makes what we're doing at Atlanta different and so special. When you look at Decentraland and this idea of one of the Web3 components is individual ownership, right? Instead of it being a centralized kind of ownership model, you've got an ownership model where it's distributed, not centralized. People own their own things. So you can kind of go in, buy property, build what you want there, and then people interact with it. That's kind of an interesting but free for all type of environment, right? It's good for artistic expression and interaction, but it's very difficult to manage from a safety perspective, from a consistency perspective, and those kinds of things. And then you think about Fortnite, which has been amazingly successful, but it is primarily been attractive to gamers, right? Your video game, you parachute in, you got your guns, as Andrew mentioned, and you're running around having fun, shooting people, and you have these very cool avatars. And so what Atlanta is doing is significantly different from that. It's a platform that encapsulates the best of the technologies best of experiences that you would encounter in some of these other metaverses or meta worlds, such as avatar creation and social interaction with different people, and the ability to interact with virtual buildings and venues and those kinds of things. But the 4-point answer that I wanted to piggyback with Andrew is that speaking from even an association perspective, the idea, as you said, of being able to have a great deal of utility in the metaverse, as opposed to just a social or a place to meet or a place to go into Gucci and buy their wares and NFTs. When you talk about accessibility and this idea of, if you're going to have a particular meeting and it's going to be in a particular city, are the venues going to be accessible for your attendees? Is it wheelchair friendly? Is it handicap accessible, and those type of things? And one of the benefits that Atlanta's metaverse has is the ability to create these virtual twins that are exactly like the venues that you would visit, creating an opportunity for assessors and auditors to inspect those facilities without having to actually go to the city, and understanding what that accessibility would look like, and rate those and record those and be able to take those offline and make decisions about whether or not a particular venue will work for you. I had one of my lawyers was talking about, they had a wedding, and the wedding turned out to be non-wheelchair accessible, and some of the people in the weddings had wheelchairs, so that was a really big problem. But there was no way for them to determine that without actually having visited the site itself. So this idea of an extreme amount of utility around the metaverse and how that benefits meetings and convention planners and those types of things is something that we're concentrating heavily on. One of the other things that makes Atlanta's metaverse different is the ability to interact with local vendors. And a use case of that would be, if you're having a meeting in Atlanta and you want to decide where you want to have your dinners or some of your offsite meetings, you could visit those facilities, interact with those business owners, look at virtual floor plans, kind of walk around and see how it's actually going to look when you go there, make these arrangements and these deals, understand what's in the area from an actual scale perspective. Hey, this is 3 blocks down the street, whereas right next door we have a restaurant that really matters to us, that you wouldn't be able to get unless you're actually there and interact with those owners. And so these are powerful utility usage models that we tout in the city of Atlanta. Another thing is, if this is successful, which we hope it would be, we've got what I would consider to be significant momentum. It's this idea of other cities joining on board this platform. So we're putting in all the groundworks and putting in all of the framework and the necessary items around this meta world to make it attractive and useful for cities and convention bureaus. The idea that other cities could then join this platform and you could travel from city to city. They could leverage the work that we've already put in to further into the benefit of and to shortcut their arrival into the metaverse and vice versa. And together we create this amazingly powerful platform where cities and businesses and venues and individual citizens all kind of interact in this very controlled space. And the fourth one, when we talk about controlled space, is this idea of safety. And so far, safety and kids talking to adults and these kinds of things has been mostly unmitigated in these other platforms due to the nature of the platform and the way that they do reporting. On our end, what we have started from inception is this idea of professional safety management around the metaverse, as opposed to gaming types of safety management. In part of the background of the company, one of the companies that I work with, you mentioned Delta before, was this idea of safety professional management, SMS systems. How do you mitigate and manage risks and hazards? How do you manage reports in a professional way? How do you do trend analysis and KPIs to make sure that you are managing safety correctly on the platform? And how do you be proactive instead of reactive as it relates to safety? And as we look at the news, I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday, Andrew, there was a big news event on one of the other major metaverses where they were penalized due to a number of things, one of those being children talking to adults and that being unmitigated. It strikes me that most of these problems happen because people are, I just saw one of the comments, that's really great.
That was Ben.
And I want to address that as well. This idea of reactive safety, which is an event happens and then you try to figure out how to manage the event, whereas professional safety management is heavily also focused on proactive, sitting down and coming up with your risks, anticipating these risks and then mitigating them before they happen. Putting on the Oculus and walking around the living room is definitely a safety hazard. In our metaverse, we're starting off with just a browser-based version. That's our lowest common denominator, and we're working and figuring out how to integrate the Oculus and those type of technologies into our metaverse.
So Joan Eisenstadt, if you're not familiar with her, she is just stellar human being, very active in the events and just all things events, hospitality, and always very interested in thinking about inclusivity and making sure that things are accessible. So she has a lot of questions, wanting to understand. She's like, go on. Yes, because I love you, Joan, and you know that. So I definitely want her specifically to understand who you are, who you're with, and what we're talking about here, because, and this is really important for anyone that's joining a little bit later, we're talking about the metaverse and its applications for the association nonprofit industries, obviously looking at events. And we do have, and I want to go back to talking about our guests, Andrew Wilson, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer with the Atlantic Convention and Visitors Bureau. And then Mike Aaron, he has a lot of different titles and a lot of different things that he does. So I wasn't sure quite which title to go with for him, but he is the creator of these real cities that in the metaverse. So Mike, what's the perfect title for you in connection to this Atlantic Convention and Visitors Bureau work?
Would be probably the best title.
We've been working with Mike for 20 plus years, and he's a tech guru that understands enterprise scale systems, and as he's been saying, also safety systems. And I think what he alluded to, the Fortnite settlement case that was just announced yesterday, where they've been penalized $275 million for child privacy issues. I think it's really important when you embark upon a project like this, especially from a CVB standpoint, because we don't want to be making headlines about privacy issues and safety concerns, that we approach this with safety in mind. And that goes back to what I said at the beginning, which is when I looked at all the platforms out there, because there's many platforms that fit the metaverse description. Some of them require a VR headset, many do not. Some of them require gaming platforms like Xbox or PlayStation to access them, but many do not. But when you look at all of them, they were built with minimal safety in mind. They really have, this is an issue coming out of generally the Silicon Valley arena, where a lot of tech bros build stuff and don't think about ethics too heavily. And this is of great concern for, I would think, imagine even for associations, especially in the not-for-profit community, because you could lose funding very quickly if you transgress security safety lines. So that's one of the reasons why we're working with Mike, because we want to build this from the ground up with safety in mind.
One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of conversation that's happening on, because of the joy, the beauty of being able to stream in multiple channels. I'm seeing comments coming in and threads of conversation coming in from different channels, from different people. And one really important conversation that has to do with the ability to be able to use the metaverse and use things like Oculus to be able to access it. And the accessibility issues connected with that. But I see two things. One that's very positive in the way that the metaverse can be used to help in the areas of accessibility moving into the future, with looking at destinations and thinking about the planning and the opportunity for hotels and for convention centers that want to showcase the fact that they have accessibility features. And then we also have the use of what we're talking about right now, things like Oculus and being able to go in and actually access the metaverse. So these are like two different things. How are you using it for planning and preparation for a visit when you can't physically go there, to get an idea about what some of the features are? And then how can you actually access it from here if you have disabilities, if you have some areas in which make it difficult for you to use some of the tools to access the metaverse? So that's a lot, right? for something that is still under development, that there aren't a whole lot of standardizations about how we're crafting this world. Mike, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so standardization, there are a number of standards bodies that are working together to come up with an agreement on standards. We're part of those organizations. They're pretty exciting. They get together, we talk about different technologies, what we're all doing in our own slice of the metaverse pie, and how do we not reinvent the wheel, but work together and inventing those. As it relates to the Oculus, actually, the first version of the Atlanta Meta World that we put together started with an Oculus version. But again, there are issues around the Oculus in terms of logistics, and also there are limitations as it relates to the audience that we're catering to. Not everyone who's in the meeting planner space has access to an Oculus. But they do have access to a browser. They do have access to their phones. And so we started with those, and the intent is to move over to Oculus. But at the same time, when we're talking about moving over to Oculus, we want to make sure that from a safety perspective, that we can mitigate as much as we can. Again, safety is really kind of a top priority for us. And we know that physically, there's some issues with the Oculus. I know that years ago, Andrew, always being ahead of the curve, did a experiment with the Oculus at one of the conventions that you had, right, Andrew? And one of the things that you mentioned to me was that you had to kind of guide people around a little bit to keep them from bumping into each other, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Right. So,
I mean, sorry. Carry on.
No, go ahead.
Carry on, Mike. Sorry. I was going to say I saw the comment popping up. Yes, the Oculus or a headset gives a VR headset gives the ultimate immersive experience. The metaverse, by depending on whose definition you take, but Matthew Ball, I think, so far has come out with the most comprehensive definition. VR, Oculus, or headset immersive experience is not the defining element of the metaverse. There are other things that are more important initially, in terms of persistence, in terms of synchronicity, etc. And scalability. Now, truly, having a headset on is wonderful. It's immersive, and the great news, as Mike said, we started looking at that. We built for a headset version, but then it's not scalable. It's not at all scalable, and the technology, the hardware technology, is really not there. You have can have a very nauseous experience. It's very unsettling for some people because of the frame rates and the size of the what's going on in your peripheral vision, because there's limitations on bandwidth and how much information you can actually put on the screens in front of you. So the beautiful aspect to the approach we're taking is we're building this for web access, but everything that we're building will be accessible via the Oculus platform or a headset platform. The big distinction right now is that the avatars, again, because of bandwidth and technology limitations, can't be full-bodied avatars in the Oculus version today, but they will be tomorrow. And when we can have full-body avatars rendered at the quality that we want, we will probably push out a more immersive experience for the Atlanta Meta World. But right now, we're focusing on scalability, accessibility. Everybody has a browser. Yes, there are vision impaired people that will not be able to access through the browser version, but that isn't even being sorted out with the headset as we stand today. There's still a lot of distance to go on that.
Well, I can't believe how quickly the time's going by, because there's still so many things. I mean, I shared with them the list of questions that I had everyone beforehand, and it was like, we'll maybe get through 5, That's why I think we should have a series of discussions. So
we should have a series of discussions.
I think we should, because we haven't even done the little walkthrough. We were talking about showing you a little bit. So while I am looking over here at the comments quickly, Andrew, do you want to try to share the metaverse so that people can see, and people who are watching this later, you can see a little bit of it. Now, I have popped up and tried to put them in the comments too, links so that you can go and explore and find out more from the website. But I also think that it would be helpful to actually see a little bit about what we're talking about. Okay, so what are we looking at right now?
So what we're looking at is the back of my head.
Yeah. You have a nice full head of hair, Andrew. That's great.
That's the wonderful thing about the metaverse. You could take years off yourself and also inches off your waistline.
I like that.
Which is fabulous.
That's good.
Yeah, don't we all? So what we are looking at here is that I'm in the Centennial Olympic Park, standing outside of our visitor center. And I have my avatar, which unfortunately you can only see the back of. And I'm able to guide and move my avatar around into an environment. And this shows you the sort of the build quality resolution of what we're trying to accomplish. This is a digital twin of our visitor center. The monitors on the walls are actually displaying exactly what is displayed in the real world visitor center today. Just again, this was built as a proof of concept to demonstrate to people, the capabilities that we have. And everything is to scale. So actually my avatar moves at human walking speed, so you can get a sense of,
How
what
long?
does it take to walk across the park. In this direction, we've got the convention centers all the way down there, and most of our hotels are on the other side of the park. So many of our attendees, visitors, have to navigate the park to get to the convention center.
Okay, let me
A
pause
wonderful.
you. Let me pause you
Sure.
right there, because I just want to, just for anyone who's watching who okay, and Joan's asking this question, explain how this would show accessibility. All right. So some of the
Okay.
ideas that we've been talking about, oh yeah, and Andrew's flying now. Um, so what's built out now and what is possible now versus what can be built out in the future? I mean, these are all things that are under development. But Andrew, can you speak to the accessibility question right now?
Well, a simple one is why I flew over here is, we can look around and see the built environment. And this is a sloping ramp. And it is built, this is topographically accurate. Okay. So an example is I was in Barcelona a few weeks ago with my mother-in-law, who was in a wheelchair, and I was pushing her around in a wheelchair. And I went to the famous Plaza Catalunya, which is one of their main sort of centers of town area. And there are only two access points into the central area of the plaza that you could take the wheelchair. Everywhere else had steps up to it. And I hadn't done my research ahead of time. So there I was pushing my mother-in-law all the way around this large area, looking for the way I could get into the actual plaza proper. And it would have been very helpful if I had been able to come in to an environment like this and see, oh, hang on a second, there's stairs here.
Yeah.
And the idea here is that we can represent the environment with a fair degree of accuracy. And if we make this a focus for our partners, we can actually emphasize those accessibility issues or features in the built environment in the virtual world. And so it is a way to help people pre-plan, but also get cut beyond the often marketing fluff that is presented, where a hotel will say they support accessibility, but they might have a wooden ramp put outside in some cases.
Well, I mean, and I just want to like, let's talk about some of the possibilities here, because if a hotel chain, say a hotel chain said, okay, we want to be the best in accessibility, world class. We want to bring in people. We want to really show that what and highlight what we have to offer. Or say a convention center wants to do this in a metaverse like this for a city, they could work with the city to highlight in the metaverse these different features. Now, how awesome would it be? And these are some great ideas that are through here that are coming in. Ben said, what would be cool here is if you could overlay the percent grade of that ramp as a number, for example, like the 4% grade. And then a Facebook user said, as a visually impaired person, I couldn't tell it was a sloping area. So like that overlay, and that's where we're talking about like being able to use this virtual environment. Even if you were doing a site visit, how would you know that percent grade? But in an environment like this, you could overlay that information. You could get that information on accessibility and have it featured so that people could go through. I mean, I could see in the future having an accessibility auditor that comes through for every big, large annual meeting that you have, that's able to go through and do a good job of checking this, even if they couldn't go there in person. So the idea of what we have to augment what exists now, I can see how the technology could be used to provide a great amount of value and to make things a lot more accessible for people. But yeah, are they? And Joan says, can you hear my screams? I'm desperate for anyone to say that from a city, hotel, convention center side, they absolutely don't even know the ADA basics versus the accessibility and accommodation issues. Right. So
No, you're correct, Joan. I mean, I think this is a much underserved area.
yeah.
And we really, in the destination marketing world, need to make great strides. And it's coming. The conferences that I attend, it is a topic of priority. And so I believe it will come. Probably not soon enough for many, many people. But I know our convention center is trying to make an effort on the accessibility front. But until you're having to circumnavigate the real world with accessibility issues yourself, it's very hard for people to really understand the needs. And I think this is an area that we have a lot of hard work to do.
Yes.
And so to your point, we can have pop-ups. We have pop-ups coming in this virtual world where we can easily, you approach a grade and it can easily say, this is what percent grade is you're going to experience here. And, we could probably easily program this so that you have an accessible feature so that people who don't have interest in that information are not getting inundated with pop-ups about that. But if you want to turn that feature on, then you turn it on. So I think that's something we show here. We have a menu system where we could really easily include in here, turn on accessibility information and have that pop up everywhere that you're navigating in the world.
I thought it was interesting. Somebody, and I was trying to scroll through and see some of the who said it, but somebody said, "Ooh, my colleague." Somebody said, "Is there a way to see the?" I'm so sorry. Is there a way to see what it would be like, or to experience what it would be like through the Oculus headset, to have some of the impairment to go through, and maybe have that through a different lens to go through the metaverse in a different way, which I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. And that is interesting. And hey, Joan, I connected Mike with Sam at one point. I'm not sure if they've continued to talk, but absolutely Samantha Evans is your person. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I saw some of those comments. Yeah, I saw some of those comments as well. I want to kind of make sure we get those answered for the viewers who tuned in, to make sure that they get what they're trying to get out of it. One of the questions was, is this real, or is this something that was created? When Andrew was in there and demoing it, it is exactly the park to scale. If you went to the park and you're walking through the park and you have the metaverse in front of you, on your laptop or your device or your wireless device you're walking through, you'll see it's exactly the same. So that's kind of the idea, is to put it in the exact perspective dimensions of the park for this particular area. One of the things that we're going to do is some creative things with avatars. We're connecting with avatar creation, different avatar creation partners. But one of the things that we want to implement are avatars that are wheelchair bound or impaired, and so that you can experience the metaverse using those avatars and understand how they fit into those particular spaces, and how those spaces work. Another thing that we're implementing, as Andrew alluded to, is this idea of being able to turn off and on alerts and informational pop-ups that let you know about inclines and ratings on outside of buildings. This is accessible via this rating and that rating. And one of the things that we want to do is create profiles for avatars and users that go in. If you're an auditor or an accessibility professional, then your profile would allow you to have a set of features that other people wouldn't have, so that you can do your assessments and those kinds of things and be able to see it in a different lens. And the last thing is concerning the Oculus, where they said maybe you can do some visual interesting things to allow you to experience it in a visually impaired manner. Those are absolutely doable. And what we want to do is we want to continue working with you and Sam and the rest of the organizations to understand the different things that you want to have and will find useful in the accessibility space, and we just build those in. So we're looking not only internally at what we think that would be useful, but we're looking externally for your ideas so that we can incorporate those into the platform that we're doing now. So we welcome these ideas, and we want to include those in everything that we're building.
I love that. Mike, Andrew, you have inspired me from the first moment. Andrew, from the first moment I saw you speak in the press conference for ASA Annual in Nashville. Mike found me in the metaverse. Can you believe that? Totally. If there's somebody who lives his work, it would be Mike, because I was actually, and it was like at night, y'all, I was, I had gotten COVID after I came back, and I was of course exploring in my office. Safe to explore the metaverse when you have COVID. And so I was exploring, and somebody walked up to me and started talking to me, and it turned out to be Mike. And I said, hey, could we potentially do something on association chat? And I mean, I think that was maybe 6 months ago. I don't know. It was right after ASE Annual, I think. So I want to thank you both. I've taken you way over the time that I asked for, but I want to thank you both for being here. You've been genuine, you've been clear and honest and helpful, and I really, really appreciate all of that. I put up Atlanta's Metaverse website, atlantametaworld.com, for those who are listening on audio. And if anyone wants to reach you, Andrew, I've got your email here. Is that okay?
Yes.
It's okay now.
It is. I mean, yeah.
I guess it has to be. So here we
I suppose it is okay.
Oh, yeah, I know. Maybe that didn't happen. But anyway, I hope that everyone had a good laugh at my expense and really enjoyed learning. That's it. I hope you learned a lot from this, as always. Andrew and Mike, what time is it where you are right now?
It is now 4:51 a.m. in the land of the morning calm, South Korea.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining us at such an early hour for you. And Andrew, thank you for joining us. I do hope that everyone, if you have questions, if you have ideas, reach out to them. They collaborate. They will talk with you. I think I hope I'm not saying too much, that you're excited to continue working on this and with people in the industry who are curious about how this is going to develop.
Well, we don't have all the answers. And I just ask everybody, don't judge us on what you see today. We have a roadmap. We've come out early. Atlanta MetaWorld is going to be a lot more than just a park. Keep on looking back, and we are very open to input. I mean, ultimately, we want Atlanta to be a very attractive place to host meetings in person.
Yes.
And so anything that we can do to showcase how inclusive we are, the better. And so I'm open to any ideas and suggestions.
I love it. And Mike, what's the best way for people? Ooh, Joan says, please, one of you contact me, Mike or Andrew, and I can share your information if you can't find it online. I will definitely share that information with both of you after this. Joan, thank you so much for joining. And actually, Ben and I think Catherine was on here, and everyone else who happened to weigh in, even if you're identified as Facebook user, I really want to say thank you for joining us today live. And for those who are listening later, the same goes for you. If you want to reach out and ask questions, please do. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Andrew, for being here today.
Well,
thank you, KiKi. I anticipate this is the first of a series, so let's work on setting those up.
Let's do it. All right, everyone. So thank you so much again. I hope you learned something valuable today that you're going to be able to use to apply to your own planning, to your preparation, to the ideas that you have for what you can do with the metaverse in the future. You know, like I put in the write-up for as we were going into this, the use cases for this, it's maybe not as sexy as people floating around and meeting in the ether. But to me, it's a lot more sexy because you can actually plan and have these functional, purposeful uses for the metaverse right now that will allow us to do more than we are already with our planning and preparation. And there are so many more use cases. There are so many other things that you can do with the metaverse. If you just start thinking about the business applications of it, training, education, all of we're not even talking about marketing. That's a totally different thing. So with all of that, and I see a Facebook user put in, get yourself an Oculus headset for the holidays. Maybe you can find one on sale. I don't know. I hope everyone stays safe and happy and healthy out there, and keep asking questions to learn every day. Because why? Because as Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.